Friends, it is most appropriate we gather in this sanctuary for Bert Albert. In the mind's eye, it's nearly 17 years ago. We are dedicating this campus, and Bert is standing where I am now, full of joy and proud of his family's role in creating this space that became his spiritual home. Shaken by loss today, but no less mindful of Bert's distinct imprint and legacy, we gather within these walls to speak of this extraordinary patriarch and to offer comfort and remembrance. Indeed, our rabbis teach, weep for the mourners, not for the soul that is gone. It to its repose, we to grief. Thus, Bert's beloved family and friends, the members of our congregation and community, and friends in the general community and from his business, recall the many vital scores of his life, a life rich in devotion to his family, to both the larger community and area Jewish life, and to others. For death has taken Bert, the loving husband of Sylvia, father of Eric, Jonathan, and Debbie, father-in-law of Jan, Rachel, and David, grandfather of Lindsay and her husband Jarrett, Jamie, and her fiancé Stephen, Sarah, Jake, Sammy, Remy, Eli, and Ben. He is also survived by his brother Larry and sister-in-law Barbara. The son of Hilda and Sydney, Bert and Larry were predeceased by a brother, Nathan. For Bert's love that united you in life and which death cannot sever, for his companionship that was shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought joy and happiness and is now a remembrance, for ice cream and boxes of candy, for all these and more, we give thanks to God, knowing that all things pass, all that lives must die. All that we prize is but lent to us, and the time comes when we must surrender it. Knowing that we are travelers on the same road that leads to the same end. Today, we who likewise travel that well-worn road turn to the rituals of Jewish tradition. For in times of joy and in times of sorrow, the Jew searches not for platitudes or easy answers, but for justice and for God. Hence, we lift our voices in comfort and hope. The psalmist says, Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid. I have set the eternal always before me.
Sheviti Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimini ba'emot lachen samach libi vayagel kevodi af besari yishkon lavetach ki lo tazov nafshi liosh lo titen kasitcha lirot shachat todireni orach hayim. sova semachot et panecha nimot bemin chanetzah Shevati Adonai lenegdi tamid ki mimini bal emut.
Thomas Jefferson called Psalm 15 the gentleman's psalm. Bert was a gentleman. Adonai, who may abide in your house, who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may, do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. And Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
As befits God's holy name. Adonai, roi lo exar, binot tishayer b'seini. Yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I will fear no evil. You are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with precious oil, my cup overflows. My cup overflows.
Psalm 121 begins, I lift my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Esa Ena.
Please join with us.
Esa Enai El Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Esa Enai El Harim Me'ayin Yavo Ezri Ezri Me'im Adonai Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz Ezri Me'im Adonai Oseh Shamayim Va'aretz. The psalm concludes, God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to speak, words matter. The book of Proverbs teaches that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver. At this sacred hour, our speaker are Bert and Sylvia's daughter, Debbie, son, Eric, daughter-in-law, Rachel, and the grandchildren. The book of Proverbs also tells us, Lashon Hachamim Marpeh, that the tongue of the wise brings balm. May the words of our speakers bring their intended consolation. Debbie?
Looking up, sorry. Okay. Thank you all for being here today to celebrate our dad's amazing life. He would have been extremely touched to see the people he loved so dearly all gathered here together. As I look out and see all of you, it reinforces what we already knew. Our dad had a life that was very well lived, a life filled with love, friendship, and so many good times. Some of you knew him as Bert. A few of us had the privilege of calling him Dad, and the really lucky people in this room got to call him Pops, or better yet, Poops. No matter what you called him, if Bert Albert was a part of your life, it is hard to imagine what life will be like without him going forward. I am now going to reminisce on behalf of my siblings about who he was at home with us, his family. Our dad was a true Renaissance man. He changed diapers long before fathers ever did, and he never, ever missed an opportunity to be with his children or grandchildren. Dad could be found at every concert, sports match, or special occasion we had on our calendars. We all knew he was always there to listen without judgment, and he was always diplomatic, even when he completely disagreed. He would gently say, "Can we talk?" No topic was off limits, and although he let his disagreement or disappointment be known, he did it in a respectful and loving way. He taught us that no matter what, we must take responsibility for our actions, learn from our mistakes, and then move on. During times when most parents would have exploded in anger, Dad's calm disappointment was all that we needed to shape us up. Whether it was when Jonathan drove the car through the garage into our sunroom, or when Eric pulled the bathroom sink out of the floor, or when I neglected to write a high school history paper required for graduation, he was always our rock and strongest supporter. Dad treated everybody he met with respect and kindness, no matter what. Though he would arrive at the grocery store and promptly lose the shopping list, when it came to personal relationships, he was totally engaged, and he remembered absolutely everything that was said to him. During the 13 days that Dad spent at the UPenn Cancer Center, he quickly became a favorite on the floor. He would take an interest in everyone he came in contact with, and he could be routinely found joking with the doctors, nurses, aides, and the housekeeping staff concerning the details of their life that they had chosen to share with him. That was our dad. Even during his own personal health crisis, he remained inquisitive, kind, and empathetic to those around him. He was ahead of his time when it came to issues like marriage equality, women's rights, and civil rights. He successfully instilled his values, along with the strong love for Judaism and the importance of supporting the existence of Israel in all of us. Our dad built a successful business and became an integral part of Waterbury, the city that he loved so much. But he never, ever boasted or bragged. He had an extreme sense of gratitude, and he always focused on what he had and never on what he did not. When we were kids, we were keenly aware of the fact that he received awards and honors. We noticed the way people revered him. It was clear then, as it is now, that our dad was special to many more than just us. This is mostly because he took a true interest in every person he met. He always made people feel that they were connected to him. Dad was also a very bright, intellectually curious, and well-read guy who served in the military, attended Amherst College, and he read the dictionary for fun. He would help us brainstorm ideas for schoolwork, edit papers, and he always stressed the importance of getting a solid education. Our dad had a great sense of humor and a true appreciation for fart machines and potty humor. He also loved to dance, and he was often the very last person to leave the dance floor. He loved to tell jokes and do puzzles and wrestle in the pool with his grandkids. He was a light-hearted and fun guy who always had a secret stash of candy to share. Dad had a terrible sense of direction and could have really benefited from GPS technology back in the day. But last summer, after a visit with one of his doctors at St. Mary's, we took a drive around town and down memory lane. He easily directed me to both of his grandparents' houses, his childhood home, the house my brothers and I grew up in, and our old synagogue. I couldn't get over how much he remembered and the fact that he did not get us lost. But what stood out the most after that little spin around Waterbury was that his love for this place was sincere and genuine. I would be remiss if I neglected to mention our dad's deep love of food, which he definitely passed on to me. Some people eat to live, and some live to eat, and he and I definitely fell into the live to eat category. He was literally the only human I have ever met who loved airplane food. And he could rave about a tuna sandwich he was served in the hospital. I often find myself uttering his famous lines, "Can I just have another little taste?" Or, "Let me just taste it to make sure it's okay." One of the first memories Jan has of my dad was when she came to stay at our house for the first time as a teenager, and my mother offered her chocolate from a box that appeared to be new. When the paper was lifted, she found that they had all been eaten. My father gave a sheepish smile and knew he had been caught. Rachel, also recalled one of her first visits to my parents' house when Jonathan and my mom left the kitchen after a meal, and my dad opened a cabinet and reached deep inside. He pulled out a tin of poppycock and told Rachel, "Shh, don't tell Sylvia, I'm supposed to be on a diet." His charming and endearing spirit and love of food always came through. My dad loved food, but what he loved more than anything under the sun was our mother. Okay, sorry. Eric, Jonathan, and I grew up with parents who had a true romance. The kind of parents who kissed in front of us all the time as kids. Ew, gross. Our parents were married for 61 years, and my dad said that he couldn't recall a single time that they fought. He acknowledged that they had disagreements, but said that through their entire marriage, nothing ever came between them. What a rare and amazing relationship they had, and what a wonderful example they set for their children and grandchildren. Whether Dad was in the hospital in Philadelphia or Waterbury or at home, he never missed an opportunity to let my mom know how much he loved her and respected her. He would say, "You are the love of my life and the most beautiful woman I have ever known. I'm the luckiest man in the world." It was like they were perpetual teenagers. When I would recount their conversations to David, I would always say, "I love you, and I know you love me, but I don't think we will ever love each other that much." Sorry. Our parents had that special, romantic, lovey-dovey kind of relationship. They were true soulmates. Dad was always helpful and attentive and loving with our mom, even when times were very difficult over the past few years. His dedication and love for our mother was extraordinary. He often expressed his wish to outlive her so he could be here to care for her, but sadly that was not possible. He would always tell my mother that she was his world and his beauty queen. His love for her was tremendous, and we all took note of what a loving and respectful relationship should look like. Our dad wore his heart on his sleeve, and he often told Eric, Jonathan, and I how much he respected us and how proud he was of the people and parents we have become. What a treat to be told by your parent how proud they are of you on a regular basis. Dad adored the people we had chosen to marry, and he loved Jan, Rachel, and David like they were his own. Jan, he loved your special lunch dates and having holidays at your house with your amazing cooking. You always knew that the way to his heart was through his stomach. And Rachel, who he lovingly called the boss, because she is so capable and organized, overseeing his medical care over the last several years, he would always say to me, "You never want anyone else in charge of your well-being." And David, his favorite son-in-law and handyman. As everyone knows, my dad couldn't change a light bulb, and David was his go-to guy. Your bond was so special, and he always told me how happy he was that I found you. As a parent, we all hope that our children will find people to love and those who will return them that love. It gave him so much joy in Nachas to not only witness the loving relationships we have with our spouses, but also to enjoy the way we are together, the six of us. Eric and Jan, Jonathan, Rachel, and David and I have a bond and love for each other that was a great source of happiness for our dad, and truly a gift that he and my mom gave us from the example they set. But what gave my dad the most joy and pride was hands down his grandchildren. He loved to see all of his grandchildren together, and they enjoyed seeing the depth of love they have for each other. He took great pride in the fact that they have always thought of themselves as friends and not just cousins. They were his top priority, and nothing stood in the way of that. 3 years ago at Ben's bar mitzvah, I found my dad surrounded by his grandchildren, except for Ben, doing shots of vodka. How wonderful it was to know that he had his priorities in order. Poops was their indestructible security blanket, always providing safety and a lot of fun. He recently said what touched him the most was the depth of love he felt from his grandchildren. One example is when they all showed up to see him at the hospital in Philadelphia, and again, when he got home and he was met with Eli's surprise visit from Scotland. It meant the world to him. I told him, just like he always told me, the person at the top sets the tone. The tone he set for our whole family was one of love and respect, kindness and caring. We will forever miss his advice, his compliments that made you feel like the most special person in the world, and his exuberant and contagious laughter, the kind where his eyes squeezed shut and he was gasping for breath. We will miss his unconditional love and hugs and kisses, though we are saddened by the fact that a man as amazing as he was did not have more time on this earth. We all feel extremely blessed to have called him ours. Dad, we will take your wisdom with us. We will take care of Mom and each other, and you will be in our thoughts and in our hearts always. Thank you all for listening. I will end here with love from Daddy's little girl. I couldn't stop crying. Sorry. I held it together all that time. Sorry. Okay. I said that fast. Sorry. Okay.
Eric?
The last part totally ruined me. Sorry. Oh, good afternoon and welcome. It's so heartwarming to see so many friends, co-workers, and family here. On behalf of our mom, Sylvia, Jonathan, my sister Debbie, and the entire family, I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate our dad's life. An incredible and special man whose legacy will be felt certainly in our family and at Albert Brothers for many years to come. A true gentleman who taught us all about character and what makes a meaningful life. So let's start at the beginning, September 1st, 1932, the day my dad was born. What were my grandparents thinking? Naming their son Bert Albert? Mr. Burton, your order is ready. Oh, Mr. Albert Burton, please come to the front desk. It was almost a certainty that on a daily basis somebody would massacre his name, but right up until almost his last day, as was his personality, it never seemed to frustrate him. He just wore it like a badge of honor. In addition to being our dad, Bert was our boss, our partner, our advisor, mentor, confidant, and friend. He was authentic, honest, his priorities were clear, high integrity, and he was always humble and had an excessive amount of gratitude. He never took anyone or anything for granted right up until the very end. But what really made him so different, so unique and special? He just had that perfect mix of all those qualities. His core values were so ingrained. They were cast in steel. They were immovable. He never had to think about them. He was always totally comfortable in his own skin. It didn't matter if you were family, friend, business colleague, customer, acquaintance, or even an adversary. You knew where he stood, and what mattered to him was that anyone who came in contact with Bert always felt that respect, that appreciation, that gratitude, and heard that thank you. Anne Frank said, "Our lives are fashioned by choices. First we make our choices, then our choices make us." How appropriate for Bert. For him, life was all about personal choices and priorities. We make our choices, choose our attitudes, our actions, how we behave, how we treat someone. His choices, his priorities, his values were crystal clear. They were his true north. Bert had a worldview few people had. He could see the big picture and at the same time see the details. He understood and appreciated what needed to happen to make the business, the community, our family all a little better. This was rooted in his faith, in his Judaism, and the importance of tikkun olam, which literally means repairing the world. This was how he lived his life and what he chose to spend his time on. To him, it was an obligation. He wanted to leave the world a little better than when he arrived, and on that measure, we know he succeeded. But Dad was also so many other things. His intellectual curiosity was unmatched. He was a voracious reader, did the daily New York Times crossword. He had amazing command of current events, and he was a lifelong learner. He was wise in the true sense of the word. He loved art, wine, classical music, dance, any food. But let me be clear, eating, not cooking. And he always loved speaking French with anyone who would indulge him, including the doctors in Philly and St. Mary's who became his fast friends. But what really made him extraordinary was his fun-loving attitude and his great self-deprecating sense of humor. His very small catalog of jokes were legendary, but most of all, he was his own best audience. His humor was silly, unsophisticated and childish, but real. He loved slapstick. Blazing Saddles and Caddyshack were two of his favorite movies. He even was found guilty of putting a Baby Ruth bar in his pool during a family get-together. It was impossible not to laugh along with him if he was laughing at his own jokes. Bert was so damn positive. No matter what was going on, that steadiness, that positive energy radiated from his body. How many people say after being diagnosed with their 5th type of cancer, I'm not happy about it, but I got access to great care, I have my family's support, I'll be fine. But I'm worried about Mom, and that's got to be our focus. Bert had it all, except maybe some athletic ability. Nonetheless, he tried and had fun no matter whether it was golf, tennis, or just having a catch. He was proud of the fact that he had the highest handicap at the Waterbury Country Club. He was the best guy to have a conversation with. His signature line was, as Debbie said, "Can we talk?" It was legendary. Sitting down with Bert was special. He made you feel energized, uplifted. There were no distractions. You were the center of his world. You knew he cared. You knew where he stood. He made an impact. Besides food, Bert had his other priorities and loves. He lived by a simple set of rules. You take care of your family. You take care of your company and its employees. You take care of your community. You take care of your country. You take care of your faith. And you always do the right thing. Those were his priorities. Those were what mattered to him. First and foremost was our mom, Sylvia. Bert and Sylvia were introduced by my Uncle Stanley, who had become a close friend, and our Aunt Barbara, Sylvia's sister, while he and Stan were both stationed in Long Island in the Air Force. And even though Bert was in Air Force intelligence, his main responsibility was taking care of the snack bar. A very appropriate job. We cannot prove it, as we believe it was love at first sight, but we do believe that Sylvia was overcome by both Bert's hot bod and how he looked in his uniform. The rest was history. They were an amazing team, and the lessons they imparted about love, respect, trust, partnership, family, and doing the right thing never had to be spoken. They were there every day. His kids, their spouses, his grandkids, their spouses, and significant others also occupied a very special place in his enormous heart. I must also mention our newest family members, the amazing women who have taken care of both Bert and Sylvia over the last few years. Beth, Danilda, Darcy, Jean, Janine, Kim, Mary, Morgan, and Terry. They are proof positive that the angels exist in this world. His life really did revolve around his family. They gave him energy, drive, and determination right up until the very end. Total engagement and total presence. He knew no other way. He said to me the other day he was so proud of his grandkids and how they always dealt with him, and even now with his illness, how they all intuitively understood what was important. I told him it really shouldn't be a shock. They got so much of that from him and Sylvia. but he was always so humble. He always underestimated the impact he and Sylvia had on the family and others. His faith in Israel. While maybe not the most religious person, he was so proud of his Judaism and what it really means to be Jewish. He loved Israel and all that it had become and represented. We had the honor of traveling there together as a family a couple of times, and I know those were highlights of his life. To share that pride and passion and pass it along to his grandkids, nothing was more important. For Bert, it was simple. Israel was a miracle and is essential for the perpetuation of Judaism and its value system. That was in his core. Albert Brothers. Bert loved our business. He loved Albert Brothers. He was so proud of the company, its reputation, its successes, but most important to him were all the people he worked with and all that we shared. The camaraderie, the sense of mission, the way we went about doing our daily business, the relationships he built with customers who became cherished friends, his national board work, and on and on. His focus was really on the long game. How many companies have employees that retire after 40 or 50 years or have customers for over 100 years? Relationships were what mattered to him most. Customer obsession, doing the right thing, that was great. Being successful mattered, but being really successful meant being successful with the team, our customers in the community. That was what really mattered. He often said to Jonathan and I, this is not about you. This is about each employee, their families, and our service to them in the community. He was so happy and proud when Jake joined the company in April as the 5th generation. A day has not gone by without Bert talking about this. For Bert, it was all about building a lasting and enduring company based on the values he so treasured. It's been an honor and a privilege to be on this journey with him. Bert was also a lifelong and proud Waterburyan, and the city always had a very special place in his heart. It's where he made his living, but it was also where he made his life. It was so important for him and ultimately for us. His contributions of his time, his talents, his resources, and wisdom were something we were all so proud of. Up until the end, he felt strongly that it was critical for him to be out front with his leadership, that his involvement would inspire others to take up the mantle of philanthropy and volunteerism, to be part of the solution, to create the change. Growing up, we could not remember a week that went by where either Bert or Sylvia were not out for meetings. Action mattered. Before I conclude, I'd like to thank everyone for the outpouring of love, calls, texts, emails, cards, and letters. They have made us laugh over the last few days. They've made us cry. They filled our hearts with pride. We are forever grateful to all of you. I would like to just read one paragraph of one of the letters that we received that captures Bert's essence. To all, I extend my deepest sympathy and share my profound love. And I share my gratitude as well. How rare it is that the father of friends became for me a hero and friend. How blessed I was. Your father made me feel so good. This job is hard and even at times dispiriting, but he inspired me every time we talked, on phone calls, voicemails, at events. He was always so touching, praising me, thanking me, expressing pride in me, and coming from him, it felt like manna. And his words would nourish me, and I was able to sustain on them, no matter what wilderness stretched out in front of me. His love was so unconditional, his affection so genuine, and his belief so bracing that I would leave feeling I needed nothing else to survive. Of course, I admired him, but I loved him as well. And when does someone get to say that about someone else's father? He was a gift. I will always feel blessed, always wonder at my fortune that he was in my life and that he turned his heart to me. So, How do you sum up such a full life? There is so much more. But I speak for all of my family when I tell you we have been so blessed. We have had the honor and privilege of working together for almost 35 years and had the opportunity to be there, right there with him on this amazing ride. But that is obviously not all. What I enjoyed most was just how much I loved just being with him, hanging out, just being in his presence, right up until the very end. The fun, the laughter, the serious, the thoughtful, the poignant, the love. I know we will always cherish those times and those memories. Dad was the epitome of a gentleman and a mensch. I count myself among the luckiest people in the world. So, Dad, it is not shalom or goodbye. It is lehitraot. See you again, Dad, in another time and place.
Rachel?
Bert Albert. Can you even say his name without smiling? Without knowing you're bound to get a tap on your arm preceding a joke or a story? Without receiving his undivided attention or candid opinion? Without feeling the warmth of his love and admiration? Jan, David, and I are Bert's children of choice. Even before we officially became members of his family, he treated us like family. He was genuinely interested in getting to know us. He knew the exact questions to ask, not just about our biographical details, but our personal preferences, opinions, and passions. With a, "Can we talk?" he settled comfortably back, completely attentive and engaged with us. He truly listened and cared. Once we married his children, we became his daughters and son, and our families and friends became his. Bert was always generous with his affection, attention, and time. Throughout our relationship, we felt his love and pride and respect for us. More importantly, he had implicit trust in us. He was never too busy to help us solve a problem, listen to us, take us out for lunches, cook with us, babysit, and dog sit for us. He didn't ask, "Can I help?" Rather, "How can I help?" We were so lucky. He was our role model, our advocate and fan, our confidant and friend, our second dad. He was the most wonderful guy. Bert lived a great life. He knew how to live, and even better, why we live. He found joy in simple experiences, especially if it involved family. Rooting for the Yukon women's basketball team on TV, golfing with friends, reading in a lounge chair on his porch on a beautiful spring day, holding Sylvia's hand. Every gathering was a holiday, every accomplishment was ceremonial, every hug was heartfelt. An invitation to swim meant Bert had equipped the pool with floats, prepared trays of our favorite snacks, stacked piles of beach towels, opened umbrellas, and arranged chairs in the sun for us. And there was Bert, eager to hear our latest news, to discuss current events, and of course, to tell us a joke, a pun, or a play on words. His message, family is paramount and to be celebrated at all times. One of Bert's best qualities was his ability to express his feelings of love. We all knew how he felt about us, and he felt our love and respect in return. When we arrived at his home for a visit, it was as if royalty rang the bell. He was bursting with excitement and anticipation. He loved spending time with us, and especially with his grandchildren, but we all knew that the love of his life was Sylvia, his sweetheart, his partner, his soulmate. His devotion to her and to their marriage was enviable. The sweetness of his words and the depth of his sentiments were especially poignant during these last few weeks. As a grandparent, Bert was always available, always reliable, always present. Despite his lack of athleticism, he would participate in any sport or adventure, from riding roller coasters, donkeys, and camels, to tubing on the ocean, to riding in a hot air balloon. He never missed an opportunity to be a part of his grandchildren's lives. His unconditional love was strong and genuine, and his life's lessons were simple and subliminal. He modeled integrity, honesty, and gratitude with his words and his deeds. In particular, his passion for helping those in need was emphasized over and over and over. Le Dor Va Dor, from generation to generation, we hope to honor Bert's memory and emulate his extraordinary example of how to be a grandparent. Bert loved people, and he had the intrinsic ability to make people feel great. From his extended family, Albert Brothers family, and friends, to his favorite cashier at Le Bon's, a server at the country club, a grandchild's teacher, a fellow board member. Strangers were the recipients of a smile, a wave, a hello. He spoke French with one of his hospitalists. He remembered the names of all of his doctors and nurses and housekeepers at St. Mary's. He asked a caregiver's son how his favorite team was playing. He vocalized his core values for posterity, all while battling cancer at a time when he knew he was facing the end of his life. His optimism and grace and generosity were remarkable. For a man notorious for misplacing keys and forgetting directions or leaving his car running in the garage, he recalled the pertinent details of people's lives because he truly cared about them. Towards the end of his life, he was surprised by the outpouring of love expressed for him, but we weren't. People remembered him and felt noticed and appreciated by him. You couldn't not love him. If you were to stick your hand into a bag of marbles filled with Bert's life experiences, it would be difficult to find anything other than brightly colored events. And if you were to toss even just one of his marbles into water, the ripples of his love and goodness will and have profoundly touched and changed and connected us all. Bert, we will always honor your memory and miss you terribly and love you forever.
We invite forward the grandchildren.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much to everyone who came to celebrate Papa's life with us today. We're Papa's favorite grandchildren. Lindsay, Jamie, Sarah, Jake, Sammy, Remy, Eli, and Ben. Each year, Papa used to write in our birthday cards, "To my favorite grandchild named blank." As we collaborated on the message we wanted to share today, the consistency across the way all 8 of us characterized the essence of our respective relationships with Papa was amazingly parallel. Our collective memories and feelings echoed one another, sometimes verbatim. Along with Nanny, his soulmate and ultimate companion, Papa poured all of his heart and soul into helping raise us and making each of us feel like $1 million, as he used to say. During one of our final conversations with Pops, he said to us that ever since Lindsay was born, Nanny and I never searched anywhere else for fulfillment. Our grandchildren have been our whole life, but I never could have dreamed that you would all feel like my favorites. That is such a wonderful thing. He smiled and closed his eyes with contentment. As we left his room, Pops grabbed Lindsay's hand and repeated, You kids are my lifeline. We may have been his lifeline, but he was also ours. We have lost the most amazing man we could have ever imagined to be our grandfather, our family leader, our role model, our confidant, our hero. However, we found comfort in reflecting on the full life that Papa led, one of consequence and relentless love. Today we celebrate Papa's life through the lens of his 8 grandchildren.
I recently overheard Papa and my dad reminiscing about a story from our childhood. My Uncle Yoni, my dad, and Papa were trying to close on an investment deal at Albert Brothers, and it was crucial that they finalize a few big decisions that day. Papa made it clear that he absolutely had to leave work by 3 p.m. at the latest for an important engagement. When 3 p.m. rolled around, they weren't done yet. But Papa promptly packed up his briefcase to leave while my dad and Yoni interrogated him about where he was going and what could possibly be more important than the work at hand. Papa refused to change his plans. A few hours later, on his way home from work, my Uncle Yoni stopped by Nanny and Papa's house to check in, only to find Papa in the pool with Lindsay, Jamie, Jake, and Sarah, splashing, laughing, chasing each other into the deep end with a poolside shark attack. Dad, this was your important engagement that you absolutely could not miss or be late for? Papa just said, yes, I had an after-school pool date with my grandchildren. There's nothing more important in the world to me than being here with them. Although we just learned of this story in the last few weeks, it was particularly poignant for us because it reinforced something we've always known. Our family was Papa's priority. Nanny and Papa never missed a meaningful moment in our lives. And it wasn't just the proximity of where we lived that afforded us planned and unplanned times together. They made it to every sports game, recital, art show, camp visiting day, birthday party, grandparents' day, graduation, even new boyfriend and girlfriend evaluations. We are convinced that Nanny and Papa wore capes to simplify their transit time. It was truly miraculous how they could be in 8 different places at once. This was never out of obligation, but rather pride and joy.
We always loved sleepovers at Nanny and Papa's house. Papa would tell us bedtime stories about when he went away to sleepaway camp at age 5, or when he manned the snack shop during his time in the Air Force in the Hamptons, or when he first met Nanny. We would wake up in the morning to the smell of Papa's infamous omelets wafting through the house. Later in the day, we'd spend hours in the living room playing checkers, triominoes, or Scrabble. Pops would be cracking his signature corny jokes and witty puns. We'd mostly laugh at how funny he found his own jokes to be, even recycled material. Or we'd sit by the piano as he taught us the Heart and Soul duet.
We often daydream about adventures with Pops, catching moon jellies on the vineyard, riding the Tower of Terror at Disney World, and enjoying spring breaks at the Boca Beach Club. Papa was never the supervisor, but rather the instigator, the practical joker, the best friend, the master of fun.
Multiple times a week, Papa would pick us up from school. He always wanted to know what classes we were taking, what papers we were working on, and not only offered us words of encouragement, but also a sincere desire to read our work. He inspired and challenged us with his own wealth of knowledge, but most importantly, he validated our efforts and pushed us to keep learning, keep asking questions, keep expanding our understanding of the world. We are so grateful that our relationship continued to mature with age, just like one of those fine wines in his cellar. We always loved waking up to a text, voicemail, email, or FaceTime, though we could often only see his ear or nostril in the frame. Remy dear, what's doing? Love you to the sky, love Nanny and Pops. Pops was always up to date on the ins and outs of our lives. Even if we called to discuss a problem we were facing, Pops would say, no, I think that's great, and that makes me so happy, and I'll tell you why. Every situation was an opportunity to learn. Nothing was ever insurmountable. We relied on Pops for career and relationship advice. We always wanted to understand how he would approach various situations. He was so accepting, so honest, so understanding, so rational. He challenged us to be our best selves and do what makes us happy.
Pops inspired us with his unconditional kindness and generosity, his authenticity, his inquisitive mind, empathy, humility, humor, and honesty. He was a straight shooter. We always knew where we stood with Pops. He was always learning, enjoying, appreciating what life has to offer. From simple to spectacular pleasures, everything was always the best. Papa encouraged us to travel and explore the world, as it's the best way to immerse ourselves in new cultures, new perspectives, and to forge relationships with people different from ourselves. Papa knew how to maximize every interaction. He would engage with people so effortlessly. Papa always went out of his way to get to know our friends and significant others, switching seats halfway through a dinner and migrating over to the kids' end to ask about their backgrounds and interests. At times, this could be nerve-wracking. Papa would corner our significant others, and we never knew exactly what he was going to discuss. We just knew this was a rite of passage, a part of the initiation into our family. Everyone knows Papa Bert and told us all the time they wanted to adopt him as their own grandfather. We've never known anyone else who was able to leave such a lasting impact on another after meeting that person for only 30 seconds. He remembered people, he took interest, he gave his whole heart to everyone he knew. On a personal note, one of the highlights of my life thus far was calling Pops to tell him I was ready to start working for Albert Brothers as the 5th generation. Over the past 2 months, I sat in a chair by Papa's bedside and we spoke at length about the company's core values, leadership, challenges, growth opportunities, customer service, and employee morale. Pops told me the invoice is in the mail for his time. His enthusiasm for Albert Brothers was contagious. Growing up, I loved the way Pops would get all keyed up when he'd sit behind his desk, talk to a customer, or walk around the yard to ask employees about their families. He never missed an opportunity to thank an employee for his or her contributions. My cousins and I are so proud of Papa's reputation as a businessman and leader who never diverted from a path of integrity, reliability, and respect. Most of all, Papa harbored a deep appreciation for the history of the business and the sacrifices many endured to continue its existence. For Pops, it was a sincere privilege to continue the legacy of his grandfather and father and to pass it down to Eric and my dad. Pops believed that if we act according to our core values, Albert Brothers will be in business for at least another 125 years. Now, as I sit behind Papa's desk, it is my privilege to follow in his footsteps, to carry forward those core values, and to be a custodian of the business for the next generation to come.
Ultimately, Papa never cared about going after big opportunities at work for the sake of having more, but rather so he could use his personal success and the business's success to help those less fortunate. His favorite quote by Winston Churchill was, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." 14 years ago, Papa and Nanny brought our whole family on a mission to Israel. History came alive, and Papa proudly passed the baton to us, the next generation, to carry forward a commitment to Israel. Papa brought us to our roots to ensure we would be connected to our Jewish identity and grounded in our obligation to make the world a better place. For Pops, impacting those around him was what it meant to be human. Now, our thoughts would be incomplete without celebrating the key to this all, the partnership that Papa shared with Nanny, the love of his life. We loved watching the way Papa's love affair continued to grow stronger through the years. Papa would say, I have been madly in love with Nanny since the moment I met her, and I love her more with each passing day. Nanny, we love you with all our heart. I am so proud and honored to wear the ring that great-grandma Hilda gave to Papa when he proposed to Nanny 61 years ago, eventually passing it on to my dad. It reminds me every day of the greatest lesson Papa and Nanny taught the 8 of us, to marry our very best friend with whom we can build a life of consequence, commitment, and contentment.
Looking back, it seems fitting that Papa taught us heart and soul on the piano. He will always be the heart and soul of our family. His example, his life lessons are a melody that will always inspire us and keep us connected. After all, it takes more than one person to play the song. In Judaism, as many of you know, there's a saying in Hebrew, Lador Vador, which means from generation to generation. It refers to the idea of continuity. In the spirit of Lador Vador, we'd like to close with a few promises to Papa. We promise to continue your legacy by sharing your stories, life lessons, and philosophies. We will speak about you often. Our children will know you, and our memories together. We promise to follow the Papa playbook, live life with intention and gratitude, focus on all that we have, not what we don't have. We promise to lend a helping hand and positively impact those around us. We promise to continue enriching our lives with the traditions and teachings of Judaism. We promise to hold our family close and never let go of the deep connection we have built together. We promise to never take life too seriously, to always laugh, to keep the lineage of the Clean Plate Club strong, and to eat dessert before dinner whenever possible. All of these things, as you have always done. Papa, we are so proud to be your grandchildren and to be part of the Albert family. We feel like the luckiest kids in the world to have had the extraordinary relationship we shared with you. Thank you for not only giving us a life more wonderful than we could have ever imagined, but also for filling it with unconditional love, support, and laughter. You've made us feel impenetrable against the world's challenges. You've made us feel grounded, grateful, confident, and empowered to do anything we set our minds to do. You are so integral to who we are now and who we want to become. When we hear a funny joke or learn something new, travel or eat a delicious meal, make a new connection or spend time with our family, or simply feel gratitude for life's simple and spectacular pleasures, we will think of you and smile. Even though we know you won't be far, we will miss you every day. We will carry on your legacy with pride and carry you in our hearts always. Love you up to the sky, Pops.
Because they are not objects, but processes, light and fire make good symbols. Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam explains the proverb. A human soul is a flame of God. That is, just as fire is the liberation of the potential energy of a substance, so holiness is expressed as we liberate our potential to be kind, thoughtful, engaged, learned, generous, and considerate. Following the Torah's instructions, our ancient Jewish forebears crafted a menorah, a special 7-branch lampstand, to hold a most special fire. For they understood that any sacred fire had to be both contained and preserved within a protective fixture. They chose a multi-branched unit, whose image is also depicted in the front of this very reader's table. Now fast forward to a bit over a decade ago. In recognition of their extraordinary devotion to our synagogue and community, B'nai Israel's leadership wanted to bestow a special award on Bert and Sylvia. We had their agreement. We had a venue, the Country Club of Waterbury. We had a quasi-celebrity congregant to MC. What we needed was a name for the award, one that would speak to the distinct role they play in our midst. For by this time, Bert was not only his family's patriarch, but ours too. And Sylvia was everything to Bert, his inspiration and support. What might capture their generosity and determination to have the institutions on this campus radiate Torah and serve as a protective fixture for area Jewry? What might bespeak an integrity recognized within and beyond, well beyond our community? What might express a warmth and a shining torch? We chose to honor Bert and Sylvia with B'nai Israel's first and so far only menorah Bearer of Light Award. At least this time, I think we got it just right. Bert and his family have received a host of awards: Malcolm Baldrige, United Way, Brass Button, Mattituck, various businesses and industry groups, amongst many others. So too, they've been recognized for endowing important programs such as Yom HaShoah commemoration and facilitating diversity at Taft and T-cell research at Penn. Still, like branches of a menorah, these all unite to form a larger integrated beacon, a passionate fire for justice, integrity, service, and engagement, a self-effacing modesty and inviting warmth. Moreover, the menorah is a distinctly Jewish design, a representation of faith and promise. It's not only our congregation's logo, it's not only the Jewish Federation's logo, it's also the emblem of the State of Israel. At lunch a year ago, Bert shared with me how his father, Sidney, had counseled him never forget Israel. A proud Zionist and committed Jew, as we see, Bert never did. He passed the fire of this dedication to his subsequent generations. The significance of a menorah is not lost on them. For example, for the final blessing at their wedding, Lindsay and Jared were wrapped in Papa Bert's tallis. Assuredly, Bert was a people person. Whether hearing the heartfelt gratitude of his family today or reading the tribute to him on the front page of yesterday's paper, we encounter the exact same person: gracious, affable, and smart, yet determined, one who bore light. Bert was a community leader and a mentor. His decades of dedication to St. Mary's Hospital and close personal relationships were such that after an earlier bout of sickness, the Archbishop called to wish him a speedy recovery and to pray that Bert would soon return to his board activities. Tellingly, Bert not only helped to connect people to one another, but likewise institutions, like that between St. Mary's and Waterbury Hospitals, the Lever Cancer Center, of which he was a longtime trustee, or our synagogue's relationship on this campus with the Jewish Federation. They reflect his vision. All who are familiar with the story of Hanukkah will recall that the menorah's flames consumed a special olive oil. So too, Bert's light was fed not only by the substance of food, as his family has discussed, but also by that love of learning. He made the most of it. Bert enjoyed his studies and fraternity life at Amherst. Patriotic, he was ROTC in college and then an officer in the Air Force. Having opted for a business career at Albert Brothers over both the military and then the politics of academia at Brown, he remained a lifelong learner. Of course, he had his foibles. Hating to be late, at home he would loudly bang on the piano to hurry up the family, particularly Sylvia. As we know, Bert was perennially losing his wallet, keys, and later iPhone. The family nearly missed Sarah's graduation before discovering his wallet in his back pocket. Fearing being dinged unnecessarily, Bert would remove his wallet and keys before being weighed at the cancer center at Penn, and then promptly forget about them. As we've heard, what he did remember were facts and issues pertaining to business and the names and life stories of the many people he met. On Friday, Jonathan shared a quintessentially Bert experience. Bert was in very bad shape on the cancer floor at Penn. Noticing the person cleaning his room, he summoned his strength to summon her to his bedside. Learning her name, he thanked her for her effort to keep his compromised immune system safe from germs. Such had never happened to her before. But the end of Bert's life was consistent with his entire life. As Jan explained to me, he showed those he loved how to die. Weak, exhausted, and uncomfortable, yet lucid, Bert remained courtly and graciously inquired about others. With all of us, he spoke of his abiding love for Sylvia, the blessed life he led, his appreciation of his family and friends, and his comfort with dying. As the Torah recounts, in order to maintain the fire, the menorah was tended to by special people. As Bert has been extremely attentive to his grandparents and parents, and he and Sylvia were ever present for their children and grandchildren and in-laws, so too was he ministered to with extraordinary devotion. We say to them, and to the many here who deeply mourn his passing, nothing so ennobles us as the will to love, to care, to learn, to promote justice and compassion, to engage with others and maintain our obligations. Bert and you have done all that. Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam. His soul with its fiery passions, love, family, work, Israel, community, part of a flame from the sacred, now rests in peace, having gone forth to reunite with the source of life. By our process of remembering Bert now as a menorah and bearer of light, may we find comfort and guidance. Thus may the one who makes peace in the high heavens bring peace to us, to Israel, and all humanity. And let us say, Amen. Ken Yiratzon, be this God's will. Oseh Shalom.